Hello YouTube, this is William. I wanted to talk about batoning again and talk about knife design, how it relates to batoning, and also chopping versus batoning and the effects on that. Okay, a few weeks, if not months ago, I did a video called Batoning, the Good, the Bad, the Ugly, and I'll try to put a link up above here if you have not seen that, because you really should look at that, because it goes into harmonics and a lot of effects that happens on a knife blade when you're striking it with another object, okay? Because it causes vibrations and a lot of harmonics and things that happen to steel if it's put under pressure, or if it's struck with anything else. Let's just say that. Okay. I've got some designs here, and all of these are new. They're going to the store, the Woodsman Elite, Northern Woodsman Elite web store. So I'm not going to beat on them. I just wanted to talk about them a little bit and actually go into a little bit more detail on batoning and the effects of batoning versus chopping. There was a question that was asked that if chopping had the same vibration or the same harmonics as batoning, and I think I said yes, but after thinking about it, no, it's not. It's not the same, and let me explain. I'm going to take, I don't want to get those knives dirty, so I'm just going to take, this is the Woodsman's belt knife. Okay, so I'm going to take it and demonstrate my thought process. Okay, so when you're batoning, basically what you're doing is you're taking a piece of wood, okay, and you have, where's my baton at? And you have a piece of wood here. You have your hand is holding the knife down. You're holding it in place, and you're striking it on the tip with a baton. Okay. So what's happening is you have forces beating down and holding down, but you also have something that's pushing up. So basically you have a kind of a U-shape forces going onto that steel. So you're trying to make that steel bend in three different places. You're trying to get it to bend here, here, and here. Okay? So if that steel is not flexible, if it doesn't bend, then it's got to give somewhere. Not only do you have the harmonics that I talked about in the other video of traveling up and down that blade looking for a weak spot, but you also have forces pushing up, forces beating down and holding down. Okay, so you're putting a lot of stress on that blade. But if you are chopping, all you're doing is you're putting forces on that blade up. You have a little bit pushing down, but not as much as you would if you're holding it down, beating on the other end. Okay, and then a lot of times, as we're batoning, we get the blade in there so far, and we don't have any more room on this end, so we start beating on the handle side. Okay, so now we're not only holding it down, we're beating on this side as well. So again, there's more stress put on that blade. All right, so batoning is probably the second most devastating thing that you can do with a knife. The first being usually as a pry bar on the flat side, prying up whatever. That's probably the first catastrophic thing that you can do to a knife blade. The second one is batoning, folks, and I go into a little bit more detail on the harmonics and the everything, the vibration that goes in that affects that steel in the other video. Go watch it if you haven't watched it. I just want to explain the difference between chopping and batoning and the effects on the blade. Now let's talk about design. I need to get up here and sit on this stump. Okay, here we go. All right. Now, if you're going to baton, and again, people, I am not an advocate of batoning. As a knife maker, I think that it's, you know, it's the last thing that you should be doing with a knife. Now, is there certain instances where batoning is acceptable? Yes, and if you buy a knife from me, then you'll get a letter with that knife, and it goes into the same detail, but, or I say detail, but it says the same thing. I think in crafts and things like that, where you need precise splits and things like that, then a knife is useful, especially fireboards and things like that. But as far as firewood, please use an axe, okay? That's what the axe was designed for. Unless you want to carry a 2-pound knife with you, then carry a 1.5 pound axe or a hatchet, okay? But there are knives that kind of lends itself to batoning better than others. Okay, what you want to look for is you want to look for a knife that's got some thickness to it, 5/32 or above. Okay, anything that's anything less than 5/32, I don't recommend batoning at all. Okay, because there's just so much stress, as I've explained in this video and previous videos, that is put on that steel. The other thing, as far as WC knives, I can't speak for the rest of the community, but WC knives, my Rockwell is, well, it depends on the steel, but A01 is between 58 and 60, which is higher than the normal market out there, because I like the edge retention on that, and because my edges are so fine. I use 11 to 12 degree edges on mine, so my Rockwell is a little bit harder. And with that, then the vibration is going to find that thinner, finer edge more often than say another manufacturer that has a 22 degree angle that's more of a wedge that's thicker steel and everything else. It's just, it doesn't cut very well, but it's more of a robust knife to splitting things apart. But anyway, I'd prefer a knife to slice than to split. I got an axe for that, okay? But anyway, but steel, if you want to do the thin stuff and do the firecraft with the fireboards and the kindling size wood, you know, 1.5 inches, 2 inches at the most, straight grain, soft wood, then 5/32 or above is a must, okay, on WC knives. All right, let's kind of put that caveat in there. Also look at the design of a knife. If it's narrow, then that knife is really weakest right there where the narrow part is. Now this knife, the Woodsman's belt knife, is wider here, and then it gets narrow here because it's got that little curve there, okay? But again, this knife is a little bit robust to where it can handle a lot of that chopping and more of that batoning and things like that for reasonable size wood. That's why the knife was designed that way, okay? Another knife design that, I mean, is just a beast is the Johnny Rancher, and this one is was ordered for the Northern Woodsman Elite web store. 3/16, a lot of steel, very wide blade, so it can handle quite a bit of batoning. I mean, if you wanted to weld on a 4-inch log with this, be my guest, have at it, okay? But if it was to fail, realize that on any knife, I don't care who makes it, those vibrations and harmonics is going to look for the weak spot. And usually that's coming up against the 90 degree grind, and it'll cause a slight fissure there, and eventually over time it'll work itself through the blade. It may take a week, it may take a month, it may take 10 years, it may take 50 years, I don't know. But if it ever finds that spot and creates a fissure, eventually it'll work through the blade, okay? Another one is the Woodsman's Bowie. Again, wide blade. It's very wide here. 3/16, a lot of steel. If you're looking for something that's going to do a lot of batoning, a little bit heavier batoning, look for things like that. Wide blades here, thick steel, okay? Because again, remember, this is where you're putting the pressure of that knife at. This is what's forcing the blade up, because you have your hand here pushing down. You're beating on this end most of the time. So this is where all your stress is at on the blade. So if you're wider here, the better off you are. Okay? The hog's tooth. Again, these with the camo handles is on the northernwoodsmanelite.com website. Again, thicker steel, 3/16 wide blades. So when you're beating on it, again, I get a chuckle every time I say beating on it, because it's what you're doing. You're beating on your knife. $400 knife, you're beating on it. Okay, folks? I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but you see a lot of people on YouTube beating on their knife once or twice. That's all you see. You don't see the longevity of that knife. So that is not a good test for a knife. All right? So just eventually one day, I hope we get back to some common sense on this. All right? But again, if you want to beat on your knife, look for something that's a little bit more robust here and a little bit thicker steel. The hog's tooth ticks that box, okay? While we're talking about it, get over here and get this. Let's talk about the SK. Okay, now you saw, if you're interested in the SK, you saw us put this thing through some abuse, all right? A lot of abuse. Again, 3/16 steel, it will handle some abuse. Now, I do not advocate batoning a knife. It is thinner here, or it's narrow here than most blades because of the design of it. I like that sweep in the cookery, so I put that on this knife for the cutting ability. I needed this angle here for the kitchen prep. I needed this here for the butchering. I needed a reinforced tip for piercing. Okay, this knife was really never designed to be batoning through twisted 4-inch logs building a log cabin. To do firecraft, yes. Okay, to do small stuff, yes. But never to be abused and put through 4-inch logs that's knotted, twisted oak, seasoned, all this other stuff that this knife has been put through. Even during our test, we went overboard with it, and we probably give the wrong impression. But anyway, I wanted to make sure that the knife was designed and could handle a lot of that stuff. Okay, is it bomb proof? Is it destruction proof? No, nothing is. Given the right circumstances, all knives break. You get the right temperatures, knives break. You get up in the northern territories in minus 60 degrees, steel gets brittle at that temperature. So any knife, if you go to beating on it, is more than likely going to break. Okay, so in a survival situation, I would say no batoning, period. I don't care what knife it is, because you don't want to risk losing that one tool that you have until you're rescued. All right, so anyway, bottom line is choose the knife wisely. If you're planning on batoning that knife and using it in that aspect, then choose a thick blade, 3/16, 1/4 inch, 5/32 if you're going to do the light stuff, and also make sure that the blade is designed to handle something like that. As much steel as possible this direction, and just be careful out there, folks. These are tools. This is just steel. I mean, given the right circumstances, everything breaks. All right. Last year I've shipped out over 1,000 knives. Throughout my 8 years since 2012, I don't know how many hundreds of knives I've made. We're probably well over 5,000. I've had to replace less than a handful of knives because of breakage. Okay, and those shouldn't have never been had to replace because they shouldn't have never been put in those circumstances. But again, I warranty all my work. But out of those 5,000 or so blades, I've warranted 5 of them from breaking. And I just want you to know, and it's not a good feeling. Even when I was testing the knives to failure, it's not a good feeling when you see your knife break. Okay, so I want to save you from that hassle and the wait time of getting a replacement knife. don't put your knife in that situation, okay? If you want to do some light stuff, by all means, most of my knives will handle it. Not all of them. I mean, the Nessie, good example. Don't beat on a Nessie, okay? The poor little thing can't handle that stuff. It'll handle it for a little while, but it can't handle it long term. I tell you what, if you have to use a stick to beat on this thing, don't do it. If you can baton through something where you're just your hand, beating it on with your hand, then by all means do that, okay? But anyway, so the style and the design of the knife should dictate what your intended use is. All right, common sense. All right, okay, there's enough on that. Like I say, go watch the other video if you haven't seen it. Till the next one, I want to thank all of the first responders and all the healthcare folks out there, the pharmacy workers, everybody that's working throughout this thing until we get through it, through this virus. Then please, y'all be careful, and thank you. My hat's off to you. Till the next one, you guys get in the backyard, whittle on a stick. Be sure and take a child with you, get the opportunity. And don't forget those plenty of Band-Aids and lots of knives. Catch you again soon.